to my fellow Super South and Teeters LL3 News Podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful Swampy Mango, South Florida, and today's date is Monday, October 15th, 2018. So let us begin. Alright, just kicking back as usual. Mellow Monday for me, just been working pretty crazy. So I slept in, it's all good. And decided to do a show. It's been a last couple of days. Ooh, yeah, so gonna be doing my typical rant as usual. But beautiful day in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Nice little breeze helps out with the heat. Halloween's just around the corner. Alright, well, enough of that. Let's just start off for here by Rutherford Institute. John Whitehead's commentary. You want to make America great again? Start by making America free again. And it came out today and it says here, if freedom of speech be taken away, then dumb and silent we may be led like sheep to the slaughter. That's from George Washington. Living in a representative republic, that each person has a right to take a stand for what they think is right. Whatever that means, marching outside the halls of government wearing clothing with provocative statements or simply holding up a sign. That's what the First Amendment is supposed to be about. Yet through a series of carefully crafted legislative steps and politically expedient court rulings, government officials have managed to disembowel this fundamental freedom, rendering it with a little more meaning than the right to file a lawsuit against government officials. In the process, government officials have succeeded in insulating themselves from their constituents, making it increasingly difficult for average Americans to make themselves seen or heard by those who most need to hear what we, the people, have to say. Indeed, President Trump has been as always keen to exercise his free speech rights to sound off freely on any topic that strikes his fancy, has not been as eager to protect First Amendment rights of his fellow citizens to speak freely, assemble, protest, and petition one's government officials for redress of grievances. Not that long ago, in fact, Trump suggested that the act of protesting should be illegal. The president has also suggested demonstrators should lose their jobs or be met with violence for speaking out. There's links on here if you want to see it for yourselves. Mind you, this is a man who took an oath of office to uphold and defend the Constitution. Perhaps someone should have made sure Trump had actually read the Constitution first. Most recently, the Trump administration proposed rules that will crack down on protests in front of the White House and on National Mall. According to the Philadelphia Inquirer, rules restrict gatherings that now take place on a 25-foot wide sidewalk in part of the White House just to a 5-foot silver, severely limiting crowds. The NPS National Park Service has also threatened to hit political protesters on a national mall with large security and cleanup fees. Historically have been waived for such gatherings and want to make it easier to reject a spontaneous protest on a type that might occur, said if Trump fires Special Counsel Robert Mueller, which we all know he's a stooge too. Imagine if hundreds of thousands of participants in the 1963 March on Washington, D.C. for jobs and freedom, which culminated with Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech at the Lincoln Memorial, have been forced into free speech zones or required to pay for the privilege of protest. There would not have been a 1964 Civil Rights Act. What is going on here? Clearly, the government has no interest in hearing what we, the people, have to say. It's the message that is feared, especially if that message challenges the status quo. That's why so many hurdles are being placed in the path of those attempting to voice sentiments that may be construed as unpopular, offensive, conspiratorial, violent, threatening, or anti-government. Yet the right of political free speech is the basis of all liberty. It's the citizens' right to confront the government and demand that it alters its policies. But first, citizens have to be seen and heard, and only under extraordinary circumstances should free speech ever be restricted. No government that claims to value freedom would adopt such doctrine draconian measures that clamp down on lawful First Amendment activities. These tactics of censorship, suppression, and oppression go hand in hand with fascism. Efforts to confine and control dissenters are really efforts to confine and control the effects of their messages, whatever those might be. That's the point, isn't it? The powers that be don't want us to be seen and heard. Haven't you noticed that interactions with elected representatives have become increasingly manufactured and distant over the past 50 years? Press conferences, ticketed luncheons, televised speeches, one-sided town hall meetings held over phone now largely take place of face-to-face interaction with constituents. I can say that too. Ted Deutsch, dumbed down Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and you got these even assholes in the Republican Party as well. They're all the same. They smell the same. Tyrannical. Additionally, there has been an increased use of so-called free speech zones, designated areas to expressive activity used to corral and block protesters at political events from interacting with public officials. Both Democratic and Republican parties have used these free speech zones, some located within chain-link cages at various conventions, to mute any of all criticism of their policies. So all you folks that you want to believe on supporting the lesser of two evils, you are saying, I will bend over for the lesser than the other. To me, it's all the same. This push to insinuate government officials from those exercising their First Amendment rights stems from an elitist mindset which views them as different, set apart somehow from the people that have been appointed to serve and represent. We have litigated and legislated our way into a new governmental framework which dictates of petty bureaucrats carry greater weight than the inalienable rights of the citizenry. With every passing day, we've been moved further down the roads towards a totalitarian society characterized by government censorship, violence, corruption, hypocrisy, and intolerance, all packaged for our supposed benefit in the Orwellian doublespeak of national security, tolerance, and so-called government speech. Indeed, while lobbyists mills in and out of the homes and offices of congressmen, the American people are kept at a distance through free speech zones, electronic town hall meetings, and security barriers. And those who dare to breach the gap, even those through silent forms of protest, are arrested for making their voices heard. On paper, we are free to speak. In reality, however, we are only as free to speak as government officials may allow. Free speech zones, bubble zones, trespass zones, anti-bullying legislation, zero tolerance policies, hate crime laws, and a host of other legalistic maladies dreamed up by politicians and prosecutors have conspired to corrode our core of freedom. So that can call these prosecutors prostituters, because they're nothing more than demonods of tyranny. Indeed, the Supreme Court has had effrontery to suggest that government can discriminate freely against First Amendment activities that take place within the government form. Justify such discrimination as government speech. If we're just court suppressing free speech, that would be one thing to worry about. But First Amendment activities are being pummeled, punched, kicked, choked, chained, and generally gagged all across the country. Protest laws are not about protecting the economy or private property or public sidewalks. Rather, they are intended to keep us all corralled, muzzle discontent, and discourage anyone from challenging government authority. The reason for such censorship vary widely, but the end result remains the same: the complete eradication of what Benjamin Franklin refers to as the principal pillar of a free government. If Americans are not able to peacefully assemble for expressive activity outside the halls of government or on public roads on which government officials must pass, the First Amendment has lost all meaning. If we cannot stand silently outside the Supreme Court or the Capitol or the White House, our ability to hold the government accountable for its actions is threatened. And so are the rights and liberties which we cherish as Americans. Free speech can certainly not be considered free when expressive activities across the nation are being increasingly limited, restricted to so-called free speech zones, or altogether blocked. If citizens cannot stand out in the open of a public sidewalk and voice their disapproval of the government, its representatives, and its policies without fearing prosecution, then the First Amendment, with all its robust protections for free speech, assembly, and the right to petition one's government for redress of grievances, is little more than window dressing on a store window, pretty to look at, but at serving little real purpose. What most people fail to understand is that the First Amendment is not only about citizens' right to freely express themselves. Rather, the First Amendment speaks the citizenry right to express their concerns about their government to their government in a time, place, and manner best suited to ensuring that those concerns are heard. The First Amendment gives every American the right to petition the government for redress of grievances. This amount to so much more than final lawsuit against the government. It works hand in hand with free speech to ensure, as Adam Newton and Ronald K. L. Collins report for the Five Freedom Project, that our leaders here, even if they don't listen to the electorate, though public officials may be indifferent, contrary, or silent participants in the democratic discourse, at least the First Amendment commands their audience. As Newton and Collins elaborate, petitioning has come to signify any nonviolent legal means of encouraging or disapproving government actions, whether directed to the judicial, executive, legislative branch, lobbying, letter writing, email campaigns, testifying before tribunals, filing lawsuits, supporting referenda, collecting signatures for ballot initiatives, peaceful protests, and picketing. All public articulation of issues, complaints, and interests designed to spur government action qualifies under the petition clause, even if the activities partake of the First Amendment freedoms, of other First Amendment freedoms. There is more, even more critical than the right to speak freely or pray freely or assemble freely or to petition the government for redress of grievances or have a press is the unspoken freedom enshrined in the First Amendment that assures us of the right to think freely and openly debate issues without being muzzled or treated like a criminal. Just as surveillance has been shown to stifle and smother dissent, keeping a populace cowed by fear, government censorship gives the right to self-censorship, breeds compliance, and makes independent thought all but impossible. But in the end, censorship and political correctness not only produce people that cannot speak for themselves, but also people who cannot think for themselves. And a citizenry that can't think for itself is a citizenry that will neither rebel against a government's dictates nor revolt against the government's tyranny. And the end result, a nation of sheep who will really line up for the slaughterhouse. Still, as Supreme Court Justice William O. Douglas advised in his dissent in Colton versus Kentucky, we need not stay docile and quiet in the face of authority. The Constitution does not require Americans to be servile or even civil to government officials. Neither does the Constitution require obedience, although it does insist on nonviolence. If we just cower before government agents and meekly obey, we may find ourselves following in the footsteps of those nations that eventually fell to tyranny. The alternative involves standing up and speaking truth to power. Jesus Christ walked that road. So did Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., and countless other freedom fighters whose actions changed the course of history. Indeed, had Christ merely complied with the Roman police state, there would be no crucifixion and no Christian religion. Had Gandhi meekly fallen in line with the British Empire dictates, the Indian people would never won their independence. Have won their independence, exactly. Had Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. obeyed the laws of his days, there would be no civil rights movement. And if the founding fathers had marched in lockstep with royal decrees, there would not have been no American Revolution. In other words, if freedom means anything, it means that those exercising their right to protest are showing the great respect for the principles on which this nation was founded, the right of free speech and the right to dissent. Clearly, the First Amendment to the Constitution assures Americans of the right to speak freely, assemble freely, and protest, petition the government for redress of grievances. Whatever those First Amendment activities take place in the courtroom or a classroom, on a football field, on the front of the White House is not the issue. What matters is that Americans have a right, according to the spirit, if not always the letter of the law, to voice their concerns without being penalized for it. Frankly, the First Amendment does more than gives us a right to criticize our country. It makes it a civic duty. Let's not confuse patriotism, love for or devotion of one's country, with blind obedience to the government's dictates. This is the first step towards creating an authoritarian regime. One can be patriotic and loves one country while at the same time disagreeing with the government or protesting government misconduct. As journalist Barbara Emmerich recognizes, dissent, rebellion, and all about hell-raising remain the true duty of patriots. Indeed, I would venture to say that if you're not speaking out or taking a stand against government wrongdoing, if you're marching in a lockstep with everything the government and its agents dole out, and if you're prioritizing partisan politics over principle enshrined in the Constitution, then you're not a true patriot. Exactly. Regardless of partisanship. You gotta stand over principle, over party. Real patriots care enough to take a stand, speak out, protest, and challenge the government whenever it steps out of line. There is nothing patriotic about the lengths to which Americans have allowed the government to go in its efforts to dismantle our constitutional republic and shift the country into a police state. It is not anti-American to be anti-war or anti-police misconduct or anti-racial discrimination, but it is anti-American to be anti-freedom. Listen, I served in the Army. I lived through the Civil Rights era. I came of age during the 60s when activists took the streets to protest war and economic and racial injustice. As a constitutional lawyer, I defend people daily whose civil liberties are being violated, including high school students prohibited from wearing American flag T-shirts to school, allegedly out of fear that might be disruptive. I understand the price that must be paid for freedom. Responsible citizenship means being outraged at the loss of others' freedoms, even when our own are not directly threatened. Hopefully all you folks out there that supports purging certain sites are comprehending this message. Citizens must be willing to stand and fight to protect their freedoms, and if it will entail publicly criticizing the government. This is true patriotism in action. Never in American history there has been more pressing the need to maintain barriers in the Constitution erected by our founders to check governmental power and abuse. Not only do we need longer have dominion over our bodies, our families, our property, and our lives, but the government continues to chip away at what few rights we have still to speak freely and to think for ourselves. If the government can control free speech, it can control thought and can control the minds of the citizenry. My friends, let us not be played for fools. The government's ongoing attempts to suppress lawful activities are intended to send a strong message that in the American police state, you're either a patriot who marches in lockstep with government dictates, or you're a pariah, a suspect, a criminal, a troublemaker, a terrorist, a radical, a revolutionary. Yet by muzzling citizenry, by removing the constitutional steam valves that allow people to speak their minds, air their grievances, and contribute to a larger dialogue that hopefully results in a more just world, the government is deliberately stirring the pot, creating a climate in which violence becomes inevitable. When there is no steam valve, when there is no one to hear what the people have to say because government representatives have removed themselves so far from their constituents, then frustration builds, anger grows, and people become more volatile and desperate to force a conversation. Then again, perhaps that was the government's plan long ago. As John F. Kennedy warned in March 1962, those who make peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable. The government is making violent revolution unviable. How do you lock down a nation? You sow discontent and fear among the populace. You teach them to be non-thinkers who passively accept it, whatever is told them, whatever is delivered by the way or the corporate media or a government handler. You brainwash them into believing that everything the government does is for their good, and anyone who opposes the government is an enemy. You acclimate them to a state of martial law carried out by soldiers disguised as police officers but bearing the weapons of war. You polarize them so they can never unite and stand united against the government. You create a climate in which silence is goaded and those who speak up are shouted down. You spread propaganda and lies. You package the police state and the rhetoric of politicians. And then, if the people finally wake up to the fact that the government is not and has never been their friend, when it's too late for peaceful protest and violence is all that remains to them as recourse against tyranny. Use all the tools you've been so carefully amassing, the militarized police, the criminal databases and surveillance and identification systems in private prisons and protest laws when you shut them down for good. Divide and conquer. It's one of the oldest military strategies in the books, and it's proven to be the police state's most effective weapon for maintaining the status quo. How do you conquer a nation? Distract the populace with screen devices, with sports, entertainment spectacles, political circuses, and materialism. Keep them focused on their differences, economic, religious, environmental, political, racial, so they can never agree on anything. And then, when they're so divided, they are incapable of joining forces against a common threat. Start picking them off one by one. As I make it clear in my book, Battlefield America, The War on the American People, what we're witnessing is just a latest incarnation of the government's battle plan for stamping out any sparks of resistance and keeping the populace under control, censorship, surveillance, battlefield tactics, military weaponry, and complete suspension of the Constitution. Interesting indeed, my friends. Always enjoyed his commentary, and I have to agree with them 100%. Freedom of speech is more important than your feelings. I'm never going to censor myself to comfort anyone's ignorance. You can't tell me how to think, what to do, and when I can use the bathroom. My rights are natural born. So are yours. We're not numbers. We're not whore bags. We're not owned by corporations. They want us to do that because it's a facade. They have us fill out these numbers, these papers. They want us to know where we're working. They wanted to say, we got to do it because of 9/11. The total monumental lie. And if the Trump administration say we can't do that, you know what? I go, hey, stop climaxing over Hillary Clinton then because you think alike and smell the same. I never filed for the hype of the 2016 election, my friends. And I'm damn proud of it. Because I see through the facade, the hype, the hoopla. Even the Russian collision is such a damn joke, and people still buy it. Oh yeah, you're talking about conspiracy, you don't have your facts, but they can believe all the hot air. Anything pertaining to Trump, they manifest over it. Double standards, my friends. We got a lot of folks out there have the Jim Jones syndrome. Drink the Kool-Aid and go, okay. Well, this is why the Ninth Amendment guarantees that. And human rights. That you get that little checkmate on free speech. Even our state constitutions emulate that. So wherever you do, my friends, it's all null and void. Your rights are preserved, can never be taken away, can never be abolished or altered. Governments can. They're expedients. They serve the people, not the lobbyist demonods. All right? That's how you got to look at it. I laugh at these clowns. I'm even laughing at the elections, midterm elections. Oh, if we get blue, we'll win. Yay. Oh, we got to vote all red. We'll be free. Yay. Come on. No such thing as that stupid-ass song, everything is awesome as long as you're on the winning team. That's for her conformist. But they play on the radio. It has to be good, right? Come on. But I know one thing for sure. Things are happening. Yeah, they want to. You got corporations with Media Matters want to purge all these sites. Many of them being wiped off, but now there's other stuff that's coming in. They're doing us a favor. Social media sites, they need us more. Without us, they're nothing, folks. They need us. Expect it. It's gonna blow back in their faces. So, what do you want to do? What do you want to see things happen? Don't follow the buzzwords. Don't be parroting. See things right through it. Do your homework. That's what we're about. That's what Americans really are. Freedom lovers, sovereign thinkers. Not some partisan, voted on partisan politics. George Washington warns about that too in his farewell address. And I do digress. Well, remember, you've always been a beautiful, natural-born person. They can never own us. Period. All right. That was digressed there big time. Forgive me on that, my friends. And this next one here, interesting. World Teeters on brink of war. By John Friend. Like here, Russia responded to recent Israeli attacks in Syria by accusing Israel of responsibility for the loss of 15 Russian servicemen. Philip Gadari cautions. The downing of Russian planes of Israeli contrivance created a situation that could easily have escalated into a war involving Moscow and Washington. This is what John Friend has to say about this. Russian Ministry of Defense has publicly accused Israel of being culpable for the downing of a Russian military aircraft in Syria on the evening of Monday, September 17th, resulting in the death of 15 Russian servicemen. The tragic international incident have received scant media coverage in the West, but as many as serious observers of the Middle Eastern affairs warn of Israel blindly supported and financed by the United States is on the verge of provoking World War III with this blatant military aggression, utter disdain for international law, and outrageous arrogance. The downed Russian aircraft after a Soviet-era Lucian IL-20 surveillance and control plane was on a reconnaissance mission near the Idlib de-escalation zone in Syria on the evening of September 17th, when 4 Israeli F-16 fighters compliment on the Pentagon's left Israeli airspace and flew over the Mediterranean Sea to carry out an unprovoked attack on various Syrian targets, essentially using the larger Russian aircraft as cover for the assault. In yet another blatant and criminal act of military aggression against her neighbors in the region, of the Israeli F-16's launch several precision-guided missiles at a number of industrial and military targets in the western Syrian province of Latakia, warning their Russian counterparts less than 1 minute prior to launching the illegal and extremely risky attack. The Russian military commanders immediately ordered the IL-20 back to the Khmeimim air base, but the Syrian air defense system mistakenly targeted the Russian aircraft and its 15 crew members, which the Russians have argued the Israelis were using as cover for the attack on Syrian targets. The Israeli jet saw the Russian Lucian IL-20 used as a shield against the anti-aircraft missiles while they carried out maneuvering in the region. Major General Igor Konashenkov, a spokesman for the Russian military defense, stated in the aftermath of the incident, "We believe that the blame for the Russian Il-20 aircraft tragedy lies entirely with the Israeli Air Force." Konashenkov continued, "The military leadership of Israel has either no appreciation for the level of relations with Russia or has no control over individual commands or commanding officers who understood that their actions would lead to tragedy. Ultimately, the misleading information provided just moments before the attack on Syrian targets by the Israeli F-16s did not allow the Russian Il-20 to move timely to a safe area," the Russians concluded. "This is an extremely ungrateful response to all that has been done by the Russian Federation for Israel and Israeli people recently," Konashenkov lamented. The incident has soured between Israel and Russia and has prompted the Russian government to provide upgrades to the Syrian air defense, further strengthening the military and political ties between the embattled Syrian government of Bashar al-Assad, a major nemesis in the eyes of the Israelis and their sympathizers in Washington, D.C. and Vladimir Putin's Russia. Earlier this week, Russia announced it had transferred new anti-aircraft missiles to Syria, including 4 S-300 launchers, a sophisticated anti-craft missile system that will significantly increase the Syrian army's capabilities, according to the Russian military. In a telephone conversation late last month with Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, Russian President Vladimir Putin emphasized that the actions of the Israeli Air Force were the main cause of the downing of the Russian aircraft, and that Russia's decision to bolster the combat capabilities of Syrian air defenses are appropriate, as this juncture has primarily intended to thwart any potential threat to the lives of Russian military service members fulfilling the task of combating international terrorism, the Kremlin stated. In the wake of the tragic incident, many are concerned about potential escalation of conflict in the region, the possibility of a broader war involving major superpowers, Russia and the United States, to break out due to the risky and criminal actions of the Israelis. Israel does risky things like attacking its neighbors because it's known it will pay no price due to Washington's support. Philip Gaderi, the executive for the National Council of National Interest, recently argued in an op-ed release just after the tragedy, the downing of the Russian plane through Israeli contrivance created a situation that could easily have escalated into a war involving Moscow and Washington. Interesting there. So they want to, like, based on this argument, they want to instigate. Israel wants to instigate and put the United States in the front line. We did this, but you get your hands dirty. We'll sit back and do nothing. Well, this is why, my friends, I'm against foreign aid across the board. Don't even call me anti-Semitic over it. It's null and void. So, one of those things, a lot of us are against it. And Mr. Trump, President Trump, I recommend you stand down on this. If Israel wants to go after Syria, if Russia gets involved, let it be. It's time for them to see how tough they really are without our assistance, and our brothers and sisters in the military suffer from their fruits of their labors. All right. Ooh, next one here came out from TruthDig. Journalists shouldn't be copied and pasting police press releases. Is by Adam Johnson from FAIR. After right-wing billionaire Joe Ricketts shut down the local news site DNA Info last year, one after the New York City workers unionized, there was justifiable outrage. The move highlighted the dangers of corporate and billionaire-backed media conspicuously operating under the umbrella of the super wealthy will fold rather than recognize basic labor rights. After the initial shock, employees at DNA Info Chicago announced they were effectively reopening a brand new name, Block Club Chicago, with a new funding model. One seeded an inspired Kickstarter that raised over $180,000, founded as a nonprofit and underwritten by foundation support from groups like Civil, Block Club Chicago, was to usher in a new era of local reporting promising nonpartisan and essential coverage of Chicago's diverse neighborhoods. Except Block Club Chicago suffers particularly on the issue of crime reporting from the same stunt ethical scope all other local corporate media does. Again and again, Book Club's crime reporting consists of simply copy and pasting Chicago police blotters about alleged crimes, with no effort to remain in any side other than the police's. When they do engage in actual reporting, the vast majority of the time, it's just more police stenography. A survey of Book Club's crime reporting from a 2-week span found that 61% of all claims in their crimes articles came from directly from the Chicago Police Department. 39% were from non-police parties, almost entirely victims of crimes, their families, and their legal teams. There were 0 claims or quotes from adversarial sources such as defense attorneys, accused of persons, or local activists watchdogging the CPD. In addition, these stories often ended with a plea to the readers to call a snitch line. Anyone with information is urged to call detectives at 312-744-8263. It is a common tag. So they can presumably report suspicious activity, deputizing vigilante readers to go on the hunt for criminals. This is a common feature for local media. Crime Stopper local TV news does it routinely. Fair.org, September 20th, 2017. But this feature passing along scary crime stories uncritically while insisting the police call the cops on anyone deemed suspect, something a nonprofit, community-oriented paper should be doing. The problem is journalists shouldn't, as a matter of course, be copy and pasting press releases of any kind. Doubly so when the press releases are decimated by people in power. Repeating government claims is bad enough, but literally publishing press releases with no original reporting on questioning on the underlying claims while insisting readers do their part to help the state is a whole other level of stenography. The reality is Block Club Chicago has made no effort to ascertain whether post these alleged crimes even took place, something its own reporters acknowledges on social media. In the context of the extremely charged Jason Van Dyke trial, which had just got underway in Chicago, involving a white police officer who shot and killed a black 17-year-old Lachlan McDonald in 2014, could the CBD be hyping up crime trends in the neighborhoods with a sizable amount of white liberals sympathetic to Black Lives Matter? Could the underlying robberies indeed be happening, but the CBD is selectively highlighting some for political purposes? Could the CBD be concentrating research for gentrifying neighborhoods like Wicker Park and Logan Square, frequent settings for Block Club police stories? Because as study after study shows, that's what police institutionally target. Crime reporting that doesn't consider these factors, much less integrated them, isn't engaging in journalism. It's engaging in PR. And with public relations budget well over $1 million, this isn't just something the Chicago Police Department needs Block Club to do pro bono. Even Obama's Department of Justice acknowledged that Chicago cops have been repeatedly caught lying about force incidents and have a pattern of unreasonable killings and racist harassment. So why should journalists take that same department's claims at face value? The second problem is with the approach of what we consider crime. There's an institutional problem, and one that perhaps unfair to ask small media organizations like Block Club to unpack. But there's a degree of mindlessness in crime reports that is urgent need of rethinking. According to the Economic Policy Institute, wage theft in the United States is greater than in scale. All personal larceny, robbery, burglary, and car theft cases combined. Which is to say, in monetary terms, the most of common crime scene is the workplace, and the most common criminal is the executive or middle manager who steals money from workers, and not in a theoretical Marxist way. We're talking about actually stealing money legally owned to workers. Thus far, Since it launched 8 months ago, Block Club Chicago hasn't done a single story on wage theft, a particularly egregious omission given a near impunity for wage thieves in Illinois. Why is that? Certainly, there are waiters and bussers and cashiers and domestic workers who can be canvassed and asked about this problem. The institutional one-sided focus on crimes done by one-off, often poor individuals resonates, perhaps because of its verisimile nature. Certainly, being held up with a gun is more frightening to the average reader than not being paid for a working shift. But why ignore entirely the iteration of crimes that constitutes more than half of all theft? And if the excuse is Block Club cover sensationalist and festival crime, this doesn't hold up either. Certainly, shoplifting and other petty larceny are no more sensational or violent than wage theft, but Book Club has found time to report on these great justices time and time again. And again, completing the plastering of the mugshot of African-American shoplifting suspect right on the page. Indeed, the sleazy tabloid practice of the plastering mugshot on the front page before those individuals have seen a judge, much less been tried or convicted of anything, is common fare at Block Club. This practice again routinely in local media forever, so these people's SEO indelibly associating their name and face online with criminality for all future employers, prospective partners, and loved ones to see. Ain't that nice? Could the CBD have made a mistake? Got the wrong person? Framed someone? These questions are totally unimportant to the vigilantes at Block Club Chicago. Presumably this practice is to warn people of what suspects look like so they can partake in the further vague notions of vigilance or vigilantism. But what of the rights of those arrested? What was their baseline humanity? Are they not in the local communities a blockchain claims to serve? The harm wrought by mass distributing a mugshot is not theoretical, and once published for internet posterity cannot be undone. So it's like one of those whole things, guilty till proven innocent, right? So we could all say, Bizarro's my Lord and Savior. Hearsay is truth. Hearsay is fact. Truth is criminal. All right, I'll continue on here. In fairness, Book Club does not cover the gentrifications, community outrage at police, and activism in a semi-sympathetic manner. Though these stories are a trickle compared to the non-stop deluge of crime, headlines that often take up half of or three-quarters of the front page. And again, it's important to note these problems are not unique to this publication. These are routine, unexamined tropes in a local reporting across the United States. Reporter and editors are overlooked and under pressure to push out articles, and likely don't see anything per se wrong with repeating PD statements that provide a non-stop supply of titillating, click-ready content. But this doesn't mean everyone should accept this brand of reporting as a law of nature. We should instead ask basic questions of why the genre exists in the first place. What's the purpose? What purpose does it serve beyond turning newsrooms into a de facto PR agents for the state? What's the social benefit to treating police departments' word as a fact? What's the good ruining young African Americans and Latinos' lives by plastering their names and photos online purely on saying so of local police? Why is the street crime the only crime that matters, whereas rampant wage theft, worker abuse, and white-collar crime are never something local news feels needs to cover? Much of the journalist community understandably rallied around DA info workers when their publication was shut down by a craven billionaire, and was broadly seen as a positive, but when they relaunched with the stated mission of bringing local news to places that didn't have any. But news is not a morally neutral enterprise, local or otherwise. It ultimately serves certain interests more than others, whose interests are served when the bulk of crime reporting is a little more than rehashed police statements, book club claims, and its mission statement to be nonpartisan, but the currency review of its crime output reveals it very much serves as a party, Chicago Police Department. So to me, this is nothing more than an Orwellian news site based on this article. And we can't have it that way. Freedom of the press is going after government. They're supposed to be the watchdogs, not coddled or catered to. So we can call this a status news site, non-for-profit. That's why, my friends, always verify everything. Observe responsibly. Don't go for face value. Examine the fine print. It's how I look at these things. Trust me, you'll feel a lot better. And don't get caught up in news fatigue as well. All right. Actually, this came out yesterday, to be exact, from Collective Evolution. After social media purges, independent news site Ben Swan announces a Segoria by Joe Gannon. The facts, October 11th, Facebook silently deleted dozens of independent media pages for what they claim to be inauthentic activity. That same day, ex-CBS anchor and reality check host Ben Swan announced a new blockchain media platform called Segoria. Reflect on what's the true reason behind this purge of independent media. Is this purge a violation of free speech and the Constitution of the United States itself? Is Segoria laying the foundation for how independent media can survive this all-out purge? When you tear out a man's tongue, you are not proving him a liar. You're only telling the world that you fear what he might say. Tyrion Lannister. The media circus we've been witnessing lately has only exacerbated the political rabble-rousing and created an even larger divide between right and left, leaving those in the middle wondering, how do we get in this mess in the first place? For anyone who has watched any of Ben Swan's reality check episodes over the past few years, you know that his agenda is simple: present facts without any expression on his views or opinions. At the end of every reality check, Ben would always finish with a statement or the question that encompasses the entire segment and would be finished by saying, "That's a reality check. Let's talk about that right now on social media." He has a knack for allowing the free thought process to percolate in his viewers' minds and opens a platform of conscious debate instead of giving an opinion or pushing his own beliefs on an agenda on his viewers. It's no secret that most of the mainstream media has been lacking in this skill set for quite some time, hence the inviolable rise of Segoria. What is exactly Segoria? There's a link for that. Below summary, mission, and problem is taken directly from the website in Segoria. Spearheaded by multi-award winning investigative journalist Ben Swan, whose social following is nearly 1 million subscribers, Mr. Swan has created content that has reached hundreds of millions of viewers. And Segoria will be a collaboration of independent journalists and entertainers. And Segoria will have two parts. One is a 24-hour streaming platform, and part two is the treasure that funds independent creators. There is an illusion of a free marketplace for ideas and debate in American global media, when in fact the powerful platform are designed which thoughts, ideas, and messages the public will be allowed to hear and discuss debate. And Segoria's mission to create an uncensored blockchain-based decentralized news and entertainment platform with a funding mechanism for independent media. The problem, the independent media is being purged from social media platforms at an alarming rate. Facebook has been banning pages with millions of fans and followers for no stated reason. Twitter has already been shadow banning content creators for years, but is now outright banning dissenting voices from its platform. YouTube is letting channels without warning on a regular basis. It happens. I got banned on yours.org. I hadn't get a response yet. That's right. Just let you guys give you guys a good example. Meanwhile, mainstream media is becoming increasingly consolidated and centralized. In the 1990s, around 50 corporations owned all the media in the U.S., whereas now only 6 corporations control 90% of all media in the United States. There is an illusion of a free marketplace for ideas and debate in America and global media, when in fact powerful platforms are deciding which thoughts, ideas, and messages the public will be allowed to hear and discuss the debate. So, what do we need to prepare ourselves from ongoing conscious wars? We must be vigilant. We must have integrity. We must shine light on those speaking the truth. And we must never forget George Orwell's warning. Freedom is the right to tell people what they do not want to hear. He's absolutely correct. And I recommend everyone to check it out. I want to see it myself. So I like this. I'm very happy that it's backfiring. Support these decentralized sites, my friends. I may add this to my list soon when that time comes. Even though the bloke like myself, podcaster, but you know what? It's all good. Support it. Defy all centralized media. We gotta resist the ruling state, but exciting demoniac resistance. And that is it. I thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share us about your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or you may send something that's interesting you want to check out, whatever you do, please send your correspondence with decorum. I will post all my social media sites and email addresses on my Spreaker page. All right. Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading the love. And may your guardian spirits be with you.